The roast was nearly done when I heard the car doors slam. I turned the burner to low and wiped my hands on the towel hanging from the oven door. The table was set linen napkins folded, just so glasses sparkling in the afternoon sun. I'd even placed a little bowl of cherries in the center like I used to when they were small, and couldn't agree on dessert. Paige walked in first, talking on her phone, not looking up. Marcus followed with his usual frown, and Neil trailed behind, nodding politely, like he always did when something made him uncomfortable. I smiled and welcomed them in, asked if they were hungry. "Before we eat," Marcus said, pulling out a chair, "can we sit for a minute?" I sat down, napkins still folded in my lap. Paige perched on the edge of her seat like she had somewhere better to be. Neil didn't sit. Marcus cleared his throat. "We've been talking," he began. "And we don't need you anymore, Mom." The room was quiet. Even the jazz from the kitchen radio seemed to pause. "You can rest now," Paige added almost kindly. "You've done enough. If you transfer the house into my name, I can take care of things. It's safer this way." Neil looked down at his shoes. "We've got it from here." I didn't say a word. I didn't trust my voice not to shake. Instead, I smiled like I didn't hear them right. Like maybe they were joking or rehearsing a scene for a play. But they weren't. They were serious. No one asked how I was doing. No one asked what I wanted. The oven beeped. The roast was ready. I stood up, walked to the kitchen, and turned the heat off. My hands were shaking just enough that I gripped the counter until they stopped. Then I pulled the roast out and began slicing quietly, as if the rhythm of the knife could keep something inside me from breaking. After lunch, they moved quickly. Paige packed the leftovers into containers without asking, sliding the roast and vegetables into her tote bag, along with the bottle of red I'd bought for the meal. Marcus checked his phone the entire time, pacing near the doorway. Neil offered a half-hearted smile before following them out, holding the door open just long enough for the cold air to slip in. No one said thank you. When the house finally went quiet, I stood at the sink with my hands submerged in warm water, watching the soap gather in small circles. I wasn't angry. Anger would have required energy, and all I felt was an old, familiar tiredness settling behind my ribs. I dried my hands and walked to the study. The drawer slid open with a soft scrape, the sound almost startling in the stillness. Inside, everything was exactly where I had left it. Neatly labeled folders, envelopes tucked in order, each account and asset accounted for. Bank statements going back years. Property deeds, the college fund I'd opened for Sadie before she could walk. All of it in my name. Untouched, untampered, unclaimed. I sat down, slowly running my fingers along the edges of the folders. There had been many moments over the years when I'd thought about putting their names down, setting up transfers, planning for the future, as they like to call it, planning for when they took over. But every time I reached for a pen, something inside me went still, a hesitation that I never quite understood. Now I did. It wasn't a fear of letting go. It was the fear of becoming invisible the moment I did. I closed the drawer gently and leaned back, hearing the faint hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. The house felt different now, still familiar but looser around the edges, as if something had been pulled out of it. Or maybe something had been pulled out of me. I stood, turned off the study light, and walked down the hall with a certainty that felt new, settling step by step, leading me toward the next thing I knew I had to do. The next morning, I poured myself a cup of coffee and sat at the kitchen table with my notebook. No more waiting. No more pushing things off in the name of family harmony. The numbers were there. The patterns had been forming for years. I started with the lawyer. "Hi, Emma. I need to make some changes." Her voice didn't ask why, just said, "Tell me what to do." We reviewed the trust documents. I confirmed what would stay, what would go, and most importantly, who wouldn't be included. Every signature they had once pushed for was now a door I quietly closed behind me. Next was the bank. The shared credit card linked to Neil's account canceled. Automatic tuition payments to Sadie's college, under Paige's name, removed. And Marcus, his name, had somehow ended up on the cabin maintenance account after a long weekend visit last year. That too was gone. I called the property manager and confirmed all rental deposits were redirected to my personal account. I asked about insurance updates, title protections, and then followed up with my pension advisor to adjust beneficiary information. Everything routed through me to me, the way it should have been all along. No anger, no big announcement. Just numbers aligned back to the hands that had earned them. That afternoon, I went for a short walk, picked up a fresh loaf of bread from the corner bakery, and came home just as the light started to turn golden across the porch. For dinner, I made toast. Just toast. Buttered edges, a sprinkle of sea salt, and a bit of honey. It wasn't much, but I ate it slowly, alone. And for the first time in weeks, I tasted every bite. There were no texts from the kids. No thank you for the meal yesterday. No questions. No noise. I cleared my plate, rinsed it, and set it gently in the drying rack. Then I reached for the file folder again, the one with every document that still had my name intact, and began highlighting everything they thought I'd never notice. The first call came at 9:14 a.m. I let it ring. I watched the screen light up with Neil's wife's name, then fade back into silence. A minute later, the voicemail alert blinked. I didn't listen to it. At 10:26, a text from Marcus. Is the power out at the cabin? I've got clients coming this weekend. No greeting, no question mark even, just expectation. At 11:42, Paige emailed me with the subject line, Urgent Financial Aid Disruption. She mentioned a payment delay, something about deadlines and registration holds. I skimmed it. Then I closed the laptop. By noon, I was walking along the trail near the river, wind brushing against my face, cool but not unfriendly. I stopped by the farm stand and picked out a few apples Braeburns, the kind my husband used to like. The woman at the counter offered me a bag, but I told her I preferred to carry them in my hands. I found a bench near the water and watched the ducks dip their heads beneath the surface. I tossed bits of apple to them, breaking pieces carefully with my fingers. I couldn't remember the last time I sat like this without checking the time, without wondering who needed what, without mentally calculating how much was left in which account. No one called me mom today. Not in panic, not in demand, not in passive irritation. No one needed me to fix anything. That should have felt sad. But it didn't. It felt quiet. Not the kind of silence that swallows you whole. The kind that opens up space inside you. I sat until the clouds shifted and the sun crept back through. Then I stood, stretched slowly, and made my way home. Apples, now warm in my hands. At the front door, I paused, listening for something, anything. But the house was still. I placed the apples in a bowl and washed my hands. Then I opened the drawer in the study again, pulled out the printed emails and bank logs, and began placing them in a fresh, labeled folder, Reclamation. It was just past noon when I heard the knock. I opened the door to find Paige standing there, holding a latte like a peace offering, and wearing that smile she saved for interviews and holiday photos. We were just being honest, she said, stepping forward slightly. That's not a crime, is it? I didn't invite her in. I didn't need to. Instead, I reached for the folder I had prepared the night before. I held it out, and she took it without hesitation, too confident to question it. Inside were the records. Line by line, account by account. The tuition payments, the home insurance I'd been covering, the groceries that had quietly gone on my card, the withdrawals, the subscriptions under my name. All of it documented. All of it signed or requested by someone other than me. Over $300 not including interest. She flipped through it at first, casual, then faster. her brow furrowing deeper with each page. Her mouth parted, but no words came. "I thought you should have a copy," I said. "I didn't know it was that much," she mumbled. I didn't respond. She left without finishing the latte. Later that evening, Marcus arrived unannounced. No knock, just the sound of his car pulling up too fast gravel, crunching under his tires. He didn't waste time pretending to be polite. "You're ruining everything," he said as soon as I opened the door. "Am I?" I asked, leaning against the frame. He motioned toward the driveway. "I had contractors scheduled for the cabin. Now it's locked up. The accounts are frozen and we look like idiots." I let his anger wash past me. "It didn't land the way it used to. I didn't ruin anything," I said calmly. "I just stopped hiding the damage." He stared at me for a long moment, then turned and walked away. No apology. No explanation. Just the door of his car slamming shut and the engine roaring back to life. When the taillights disappeared, I stepped back inside and locked the door behind me. Then I sat down with a pen and wrote my lawyer's name on a blank envelope. By the end of the week, everything had gone out. My lawyer, Margaret, had handled it all with her usual crisp precision. No anger, no judgment, just quiet action. Formal notices were delivered by certified mail. Digital copies were sent to each address on file. The lease on Neil's rental was amended. He would now deal directly with the property manager at full market rate, with a security deposit due immediately. The cabin locked. Access codes changed. Keys invalidated. Use suspended indefinitely. Page's tuition fund was frozen. The bank was notified that no further disbursements would be made until a new trustee was named, which would not be me. And the loans, Margaret had her team prepare reassessment documents, repayment schedules, interest calculations, and clear language stating that these were never gifts. They had been assumed to be favors. But favors unchecked become debts. Within 24 hours, the reactions came flooding in. Neil called 3 times, his voice sharp defensive. Page emailed, accused me of publicly humiliating her. Marcus posted a photo on social media with the caption, "When your own mother turns her back on you. Remember, money changes people." I didn't reply. I didn't argue. I didn't correct them. I simply turned off notifications and brewed myself some tea. That night, I lit a candle on the porch and watched the light flicker against the darkening sky. The air smelled clean, cool, and still. For the first time in years, no one needed anything from me. I woke before sunrise. The house was quiet the way only old places can be settled, patient, full of echoes. I made myself a cup of tea and walked slowly from room to room, letting my eyes fall on things I hadn't truly looked at in years. In the hallway, my husband's medals hung in a narrow frame. I took them down and wiped each one with a soft cloth. He had worn them only once after retirement. He hated attention, but he loved the meaning behind them. I wondered when my children last paused in front of them, or if they ever had at all. In the sitting room, I unfolded the quilt my mother stitched when I was pregnant with Paige. She'd sewn tiny wildflowers across the border, each one in a different pattern, as if she knew life would not grow in straight lines. I laid the quilt across my lap, smoothing the worn cotton, remembering my mother's hands moving like a steady breeze across fabric. Down the hall, I opened a drawer, crowded with notes, recipes my husband scribbled on scraps of paper, little reminders I had written for myself, birthdays marked for grandchildren who rarely answered calls. None of the pages were important now, but I held each one before letting it go. By noon, I had made 3 piles: keep, donate, discard. The donate pile surprised me with its size. Chairs I no longer needed. Lamps that had survived 3 houses too many. Antiques my children used to call clutter. Books they never touched. All of it would find better homes elsewhere. The keep pile was small. The quilt. The medals. A few photographs, my journals. A teacup with a tiny chip that made it feel more mine. For the first time in my life, I chose what stayed because it brought me peace, not because someone else might want it someday. As the sun dipped in the sky, I carried the donation boxes to the front door, leaving space behind me where noise used to live and a different kind of space ahead for whatever I needed to gather next. I was pruning the lavender by the porch when I saw Neil's car slow in front of the house. He parked but didn't get out right away. Just sat there, hands on the wheel, staring straight ahead like he wasn't sure if he was welcome. I didn't move. I kept clipping bunch by bunch until he finally stepped out and walked toward me. No raised voice. No guilt wrapped in pleasantries. Just a quiet, almost hesitant, "Can we talk?" I nodded and led him around to the back where the chairs overlooked the garden. We sat with nothing between us but the distance of choices made and never spoken aloud. He looked older than I remembered. Worn down, less certain. "I didn't come to argue," he said. "I just wanted to ask. Why didn't you tell us that we were hurting you?" I looked at him for a long time before answering. "Because I wanted love to be enough," I said. But it wasn't. He blinked, fast eyes beginning to shine. "I didn't know," he whispered. I nodded. "I know you didn't." He didn't defend himself. Didn't blame anyone. Didn't ask for money or access or explanations. He just sat with it. After a while, he stood. "I'm sorry," he said, voice unsteady. I didn't say it was okay. I didn't rush to soothe him. I just placed a hand over his and we stayed like that for a moment. Then he turned, walked to his car, and drove off without looking back. That evening, I opened my journal and wrote slowly, each word measured. Today, I didn't rescue anyone. I didn't fold. I didn't smooth the edges. I let truth sit between us and I let it stay there. I think that's what love looks like when you finally stop trying to earn it. I closed the notebook and set it beside the envelope from Sadie's last letter, still unopened. I'd been saving it for the right moment. That moment had come. The house was smaller than any place I'd ever lived in, but it felt exactly right. One bedroom, a sunroom that caught the morning light, and a little patch of garden just big enough for tomatoes and basil. It was tucked near a quiet street, 2 towns over, close enough to the farmer's market, but far enough that no one would stumble across it by accident. I signed the papers, wired the funds from my personal account, and asked the agent to remove my last name from the mailbox. When the keys were in my hand, I drove there alone. No ceremony, no welcome party. Just a deep breath and the sound of gravel crunching beneath my tires. My forwarding address went only to 2 people, my lawyer and Sadie. I didn't leave a note for the others. My phone number changed, the old email closed. The house I left behind was relisted under a private inheritance trust. Margaret handled the filings. I told her to make it simple, clean, untraceable. The cabin took longer to close up. I walked through it one last time, dust on the windowsill, family photos still on the mantel. I packed the photos, left the dust. In the drawer where they used to keep firewood matches, I placed one envelope. No greeting, no explanation. Just a folded piece of paper. I gave you everything. Now I'm keeping what's mine. The locks were changed the next morning. At my new home, I unpacked slowly. The quilt from my mother draped over the reading chair. My journals stacked neatly beside the window. The chipped teacup resting in its place on the kitchen shelf. There was no room here for pretending. Only room for truth and peace. I walked out to the garden and pressed my fingers into the dirt. It felt cool, alive. I'd plant in the morning. Today I just wanted to sit in the sunroom, barefoot, window cracked open, and read Sadie's letter again. She'd written it in blue ink. "I'm glad you're somewhere that feels like you again." I was. And I wasn't going back. The days settled into a rhythm that felt like breathing for the first time. I woke early, opened the windows, and stepped barefoot onto the small patch of grass behind the house. The tomatoes came in slowly, at first, tiny green beads clinging to thin stems. But I watched them grow a little more each morning. I baked on the quieter afternoons, simple things, crusty bread, blueberry muffins, a pie now and then. Everything tasted different when I made it only for myself. On Wednesdays, I volunteered at the clinic in town. I checked charts, organized supplies, and held the hands of patients nervous about stitches or test results. No one there asked me for money. No one demanded anything of me except kindness, which I had plenty left to give. Every Sunday, without fail, a letter from Sadie appeared in my mailbox. She never tried to sound older than she was. She wrote about school, her art, a cat she saw on her walk home, a poem she found taped to a locker. I answered each letter slowly, taking my time with the words. It felt like conversation, done right, thoughtful, patient, without expectation. One morning at the market, while I was comparing bunches of fresh herbs, an older woman beside me commented on the weather. We chatted a bit, the way strangers do, and then she asked, as casually as someone might ask the time, "Do you have children?" I didn't flinch. I didn't scramble for the right version of the story. I simply smiled. "Yes," I said, "but I'm raising someone new now, myself." She laughed softly, not unkindly, and wished me a good day before wandering off toward the bakery stall. I paid for my herbs and walked back to my car, the morning sun warming my shoulders, the bag swinging lightly from my hand. There was no rush, no guilt tugging behind me, no weight I had to carry home. Just the road ahead, quiet and open, waiting for whatever I chose to fill it with next.